the Victimhood. It's the Victimhood show. It's the Victimhood. It's the Victimhood show. It's the Victimhood. It's the Victimhood show. It's the Victimhood. It's the Victimhood show.
Ladies and gentlemen and ladies, welcome to the B. Tatum Show. I have a bunch of I say a bunch, it's only two people in. Chad's supposed to be here, but he's late because he's on CPT. But I got my friends here. Amala is at the bottom down there. We got Oliver Mack at the top, the right wing angel. Amala is almost to 1 million.
Almost there.
Almost to 1 million.
Go fill me up. Go to YouTube.
I'll go and follow Amala so you can get to 1 million subscribers, which is absolutely awesome. Amala, what's your YouTube channel?
Yeah, it's Amala Epinobi and then :unapologetic, which you can see above me there, and that's why you'll find me on YouTube.
Perfect. How did you get that camera so good? It's like it's just perfectly angled to where unapologetic is right there at the top.
You know, I got a nice little team who does all of this for me, so I don't have to worry about all that.
Awesome. So I wanted to jump right into the big elephant in the room with Uganda literally banning association to the LGBTQ could be possibly punishable by life in prison. What do you guys think about Uganda doing this? Like, is it something that you think is positive, negative? Should America do something similar or not? I want to hear from you guys.
Sure. I mean, I'll kick it off. I'm not a religious person, so I bear no responsibility as far as a government having to mandate or regulate a person's sexuality. So when I saw this out of Uganda, it actually made me a little bit disheartened to see that this is happening in other parts of the world and that people have to be in fear of their government in this way. What I will say is that watching the LGBTQ plus agenda in America sort of come to full fruition and take on sort of these extremes, I think what's happening here in a lot of ways is influencing other countries to move in that direction because they're looking at what we deem to be the LGBTQ community and saying, this is some pretty extreme stuff, and it's extreme stuff that I don't agree with. So these other countries are watching that and saying, I want no part in that happening in our country. How do we stop this influence now? And that's how we get places like Uganda.
Interesting. Oliver, what you think?
Yeah, I think for me, we live in a free country, so I wouldn't imagine anything like that happening here. I wouldn't want anything like that happening here, but Uganda is a different country. They have different morals, different values, and I respect their right to be able to enforce whatever laws that they choose or whatever laws they want to enforce. So the fact that they're doing this, I mean, that's their country, so it doesn't really bother me, but I get that some people will be outraged by this, especially with the implications of, hey, if you're identifying as LGBTQ, that you could be thrown in prison for the rest of your life. I think that's really extreme, and I would never go there. But I mean, they're a sovereign country, and they can do what they want. I don't know if you guys saw that, but the Biden administration, someone from the Biden administration actually came out and said that they were actually considering opposing some kind of punishment against Uganda, actually taking away the aid that the United States is giving them if this law happens to pass. And I'm not for that at all either. So I would say that we need to leave them alone. If we're going to if they're going to have their laws, they can have their laws. And if we're going to provide medical aid to them, then it shouldn't be dependent on what kind of laws they enforce with their own country.
Right. I think I agree with what you guys both are saying. I'm not really, it seems to be extreme. And I don't know if it's because I live in the United States of America and we're so used to people having the freedom to do whatever the heck they want to do. And there's no real repercussions for people being homosexual directly to individuals. It is really no repercussion. It's just the LGBTQ movement has become something that's nightmarish. It was not a word, I just made that up, but I think people understand what I'm saying. It's become a nightmare to push the agenda. Like, I always separate the agenda from the people. I know a lot of people that are gay. I don't agree with it. I'm not I don't agree with the lifestyle. However, I have people that are my friends that are gay. It ain't none of my business, to be honest, unless they ask me my opinion. But the movement is a whole nother beast. I think they're literally pushing pedophilia on children in schools. I mean, they are literally thrusting this stuff in the face of the average American. And it's really a turnoff for me. It's like, if you want to do your own thing in your bedroom, just do it. We don't have to cross-pollinate this stuff. But I think Uganda is, in a way, probably don't have the same issues we have. I don't think it's as big as the United States of America by far. And I think that they probably have hardly no people that are gay or identify as gay. And if they do, it's probably one person. And so I think they're trying to set the example and set the tone so it don't end up being like the crazy stuff that they see around the country. And that's why I think they can be so extreme. I mean, just imagine if they had the amount of homosexual identifying people as we do in America. I mean, it literally like 20% of their population to be doing life in prison. So,
Yeah.
I don't think they have the same issues we have.
But what you said there is really important. It's really important to separate individuals from the work of larger movements. I recently had a guy on my show, Amir Odom, who is an openly gay man and also is very conservative in his social views and in his political beliefs. And there are a lot of gay, lesbian, bisexual people now who are coming out and saying, oh yeah, I mean, this is my sexuality and this is how I choose to live my life, but I am by no means a part of an LGBTQ plus community. And I think it's the same thing as far as how we view the Black community. A lot of people come out and say Black community. To that I say, what does that mean? Does it mean that because we all have the same skin color or we all do the same thing behind closed doors that we're meant to be lumped together in some sort of group that all believes the same thing? And we know that's not to be true. So when it comes to these horrendous stories that are coming out with, pornography in schools or people trying to groom children, I think it's really important that we judge it based on the individual who is pushing those specific ideas rather than labeling an entire group of people, because there's certainly so many of them who disagree with what's happening right now.
100%. I think we got Chad in the house. Chad, CPT Chad, welcome to the show.
Hey, it's really not my fault. Like
Yeah.
So typically I'm late to things, and I just knew that I was going to be on time for this. And for some reason, my iMac is acting up. The link did not want to work, so I had to bring out my MacBook. So it's working on my MacBook now. So sorry I'm late.
Oh, no problem, man. I'm just giving you a hard time. I was late to this thing, and I'm supposed to be hosting it. But this is one thing I want to bring into perspective and see how you guys feel about it. I think that the slippery slope is the concern for most people, especially for me as a Christian. It's the slippery slope. It's like, I do believe that everybody in America should be able to do whatever they want to do. It's that when you say, I want, to call this relationship with two men together as a marriage, that's where I find it to be something that is not productive and is a slippery slope. And let me explain. I think most people want marriage because of the benefits that you get, right? It's not necessarily because it's a religious thing. Some people want to be married so they can share wealth and whatever the case may be. And I think that that's totally fine. If you're gay and you're in a relationship like that, then I would call it a civil union, and you compare that with government benefits since it's a government instituted thing. I think it shouldn't be marriage, because then it starts to encroach on Christian principles and the foundation of the family. And then if you start to encroach in one area, they just have taken it all downhill fast, because now they go, well, it's a marriage. So if it's a marriage, then a pastor has to be able to marry me, or he's discriminated against me. Or, they go on further and it goes down to children now. Now we want to change the pronouns, and now you got to adhere to my pronouns. And if you don't, you're a bigot, you're hateful. And then it kind of pushes in the realm of Christianity. And then I'll pass the mic around, because I think to a certain degree, they want to shun Christianity, because if you have an opinion about it, if you have an opinion about gay marriage that don't even really need to be called marriage in the first place, if you have an opinion about it, then now you're homophobic. Now the church is homophobic, and all of these things begin to matriculate downhill. Now, that's just my opinion. I love to hear what you guys have to say, because I think we got a pretty diverse group of us here tonight.
Yeah, I actually agree with you. I think there's a conundrum that was created when we normalized the activity, right? It became something that people started to want to do. It became something that became cool, something that was popular. And I think there's a lot of kids today that don't feel like they belong to a group, or they may feel like they're outcasts. and then they see this thing called the LGBTQ community, and it's like, oh, I could be a part of this. All I have to do as identify as one of the letters, right? So in the slippery slope that you talked about, I think that's a big fact, and I think that's something that Uganda may have been concerned about, because there are some people out there that feel like when we legalize gay marriage, that started this downhill trend to where we are today. So, I mean, I don't know if I believe it completely, but there is some validity, I believe, to that argument that when we legalized it, we made it normal, then people just started to try to normalize everything surrounding this certain community.
Yeah, I wonder how many. Let me pose this question to you guys. I wonder how many people are born this way versus nurtured into this particular scenario. Everybody I know, like I personally know that are gay, it seems that it was an incident that occurred in their lives, whether it was sexual assault, whether it was sexual exposure, whether it was, having a negative relationship with their father. It seems like it was something at a pivotal point in their lives where it put them in a trajectory where they found the same sex to be attractive. But some people argue that people are born that way. Now, I had a little cousin that was twisting ever since he was little, and I'm like, maybe he was. I don't know. We knew he was doing this when he was really little, and I'm like, maybe because he didn't have his daddy around, and all he knew was his mom, and all he did was hang around women all day. So, the question that I have to you guys is that, what percentage do you think is that people are either born this way, born with the propensity, or that are nurtured? What's the percentage in this happening?
I guess it's hard to kind of put a percentage to it. I would say philosophically, it's hard to say that anybody is born anything in particular. So I think a lot of everything we do in our lives has to do with socialization and nurture. And we all as humans have a biological drive, of course, to procreate, but there are many things that can override that drive with people who end up being homosexual. Some of it is nurturing and things that happen to them as children or things that they were exposed to. With maybe women who experience sexual trauma, sometimes that leads them down the path of not wanting to engage in sexuality with anybody whatsoever and not wanting to procreate. So there's so many different things that can happen in life, but I think for the most part, all of our sexual tendencies are either driven by biology and this somewhat necessity to procreate, or external experiences.
Yeah, I would agree with Amala. I mean, if anecdotal experience or relationships count for anything, I, like you, Brandon, most of the people that I know who do identify as homosexual have had some kind of issue that have happened in the past, whether it be molestation or whatever the case may be. Of course, that's not the majority of them, but or that's not all of them, but that is a pretty good number as far as who I know personally. But with your question, particularly as it pertains to marriage, and those who are gay using the word marriage to describe their relationship with their significant other, I think that this is kind of par for the course in terms of this progression that we see happening since the Enlightenment. When you look at the social contract, Jean-Jacques Rousseau, this idea of moving away from a theological way of looking at things, or a biblical way of looking at things, and considering first and foremost the arts and the sciences. Secularism is king at this point in Western history. And as such, we are kind of moving down this track where all that which is sacred is being deconstructed, and in its place, this kind of secular version of it is being constructed. And as such, with the LGBT movement, alive and well, they are, of course, going to hijack certain things that have kind of spiritual or Christian sounding language and use it for their thing, and then over time eradicate it. This is all well documented as part of the gay liberation movement.
Well, I would kind of push back on that just a little bit, in that the US government created marriage, or not necessarily created marriage, but made marriage become a contract that came with certain distinct benefits that you get from the government, as Brandon mentioned earlier. So if you have straight couples who are getting tax benefits, getting, health insurance benefits from being married, and there is now a socioeconomic incentive to being married, to link that with the governance and then say, well, gay couples aren't allowed to have that. Of course, gay couples who have lived together for a multitude of years, who maybe want to have children together, who want to experience the same benefits, are going to want to have marriage. And I think it has nothing to do with necessarily taking on religious terms or trying to steal them from Christians, but the fact that the separation of church and state got a little bit blurry when marriage became a contract that came with benefits.
Well, I think we're talking about two different things. We're talking about rhetoric versus law. Of course, in law, you have to take that which is familiar to the general society, namely marriage. And we understand marriage traditionally being between one man and one woman who are together in one household raising children. Of course, there are benefits that come with that as far as the law is concerned. And gays who want in on some of those tax benefits or what have you are trying to have those same rights extended to them. And so I think we can all agree that in a society in which we share, that there needs to be certain legal permissions granted to individuals who are American citizens. However, when it comes to the word marriage or the union that is marriage, that is a Christian biblical concept. And so I think those are two different conversations.
So do you think that gay people should still be able to engage in something else and get the same exact benefits as married people, but under a different name, not under the biblical phrase of marriage?
I think that there isn't enough outcry from the Christian community taking ownership of the word marriage. And so at this point, if we are a democratic republic and our laws are supposed to be representative of the larger society, if the church isn't making a point to say that marriage is a Christian thing, or at least not as loudly as the so-called LGBT movement, then I think that per the Constitution, we have to abide by what the will of the people is. But if you're asking about my personal opinion, I'm kind of indifferent on the matter. I do believe that marriage is between one man and one woman. However, when it comes to the law of the land, and the fact that we live in a constitutional republic where the will of the people is supposed to have the upper hand, to that point, I say I'm just indifferent on the matter.
Yeah, I think that I would like to see those two be separated by name only, right? Because benefits and perks, I think that the government should have never been involved in marriage in the first place. Now, we do know the origin of the government's involvement is to incentivize procreation, to incentivize people to be together, stay together, and to raise children together in order to make a better society, versus incentivizing a lot of single parent homes and stuff like that. So the government wanted to get involved and encourage people to come together and have a committed contract and creating kids. Now, I think that was all based on a biblical principle initially. And so I think that we should just separate the words so that we can not cross-pollinate and have conflict. Now, some Christians will probably have conflict no matter what, because some people are a lot more controversial and they'll be mad at gay people no matter what. But I think that the term should be separated, right? A civil union would be sufficient, in my opinion, in a marriage. Keep those two terms separated with the same benefits provided by the government if people so choose, because I just think that it hasn't done it so far, but I think it's going to segue its way into the church. Now it has to a certain degree, but I think that in some places they're going to force people to what they call marry. And in the church, marriage is between a man and a woman. But in society, marriage is now, whoever want to be together in a committed relationship per government institution. And here's another thing. And there's another problem, is that the government should be out of the church, right? Because if the government is giving you money, they run you. Or if they're giving you 501c3 status, then they run you. So now the government is supposed to be a separation of church and state, but now the government can penalize churches if they don't associate with the secular concept of marriage that the government created that's contradictory to the church. I mean, I don't think it's a big issue, right? I wouldn't go protest the issue. It's just that in my mind, I think of these things and I wish we would separate it so we don't go down that slippery slope and they begin to do what Chad was saying, was that the movement of eradicating and secularizing almost every aspect of Christianity, because some people do have a vested interest to see Christianity be done away with.
Right. Yeah, I would be curious to see if that does happen. What you talked about as far as compelling people to officiate certain marriages and pastors doing that, it reminds me of the cake story of the cake baker who was asked to make a cake for a gay wedding and then ended up taking that as a civil lawsuit. And I imagine if that were to happen and it were to be a trend where gay couples start asking pastors, it would reach a court of law and hopefully be struck down. But like you said, yeah, we are in a time where we run the risk of that not being the case. Anybody who has any sort of ideology or religious belief should be able to deny a service to those that they don't agree with.
Yeah, we have a lot of religious leaders, a lot of churches out there that are actually on board with this whole LGBTQ push as well. So they'll probably find a lot of allies in the church that are going to make churches who are more traditional kind of ostracized and kind of made to look like bigots because these other churches are going along with it. So why aren't you?
Yeah. And to your point, Amala, about maybe it will happen, maybe it won't. This is why I commend Brandon with Blexit and yourself with PragerU for educating this upcoming generation on, just core values of, what it is we believe in. Because the fact of the matter is we would like to think that the lofty, halls of our, Congress and Senate, we would like to think that, and even our courts, we would like to think that they will, in a sense, keep and preserve the truity of our Constitution. But the fact of the matter is our future will be led by the people who are currently going to schools and who are currently being educated in such a way to look at everything from a status perspective or from a secular perspective. And as such, it is not too far-fetched to believe that 20 or 30 years from now, once these people kind of get into office, secure their rings of power, whether it be in the executive branch, the congressional branch, or in the judiciary, that they will, of course, begin to, in a sense, deconstruct or eradicate certain religious freedoms that we have.
Yeah, it's interesting because I come from a completely secular perspective myself, and I think there is beauty in secularism as far as governance is involved because it comes from an unbiased perspective, but with the caveat that all religious freedoms should be protected by our U.S. government, and everybody should be able to express their religious beliefs in whatever way they see fit, so long as, of course, they're not harming other people or, jihadist extremists or something like that.
Right. I want to jump to another subject because Chad, having you in the chat just makes me want to talk about this subject because I'm not as articulate as you are in talking about Martin Luther King. So let me frame this real quick. I am skeptical of almost everything I hear in history because I see the way that they frame Black Lives Matter. And they made it out to be a legitimate activist group. Now they have the organizations of inclusion and equality and all this other crazy stuff that they swear is needed in our society because America is so racist and Black people are worse off now than they've ever been. And so it makes me question, what else are they misleading us about? When I found out that the first legal slave owner in America was a Black man, Anthony Johnson, it shocked me. When I found out that Harriet Tubman was actually married at the time she created the Underground Railroad, and she was living with her husband, who was a free Black man at the time they lived in the same house, and he was actually opposed to her starting the Underground Railroad, it started to shock me at the things that I've seen. And now watching in America how they blot out a segment of history where Black people were flourishing and very successful and growing in number and wealth and status, all of those, and they blot that out to jump over it to go to slavery. Then they jump to Jim Crow, and then they go to today and Tamir Rice or something. It made me question, was the movement, the civil rights movement, another BLM movement, or was it legitimately a movement that made Black people better in America? I mean, that time period of the 40s, 50s, and 60s, because we see the welfare state pick up in a tremendous way. Black people, I feel like, are more disgruntled about America now than they were in Jim Crow South. Yeah. So I just want everybody to kind of speak to that point. I know, Chad, you got a whole documentary, Uncle Tom 2. I think there's another one coming out. I saw a little clip where you address these issues, but I want to know everybody's opinion about the civil rights movement. Was it effective? Was it not effective? or was it a combination of both?
Well, these conversations are very difficult to have because we all went to the same public schools. We all, heard the same politicians all of our lives. I think everybody on this panel are millennials. And so we were subject to the same kind of curriculum and upbringing. And this is the reason why people like, Thomas Sowell is so important and others, because they're able to speak to not only history, but also data and statistics in such a way that begins to break down a lot of these narratives that we have as a kind of preconceived notion. When you look at the trajectory of Black people in America from the end of slavery to the 1960s, you saw this upward trajectory, and this is well documented, including by Thomas Sowell. When you look at entrepreneurship, when you look at literacy, when you look at home ownership, in spite of the narrative of how Jim Crow kept Black people down and how we were redlined and how we weren't, granted access to certain benefits and such and so forth. The fact is, when you look at the real numbers, you'll see that Black people were actually doing quite well, and in many cases as well as their white counterparts, in spite of Jim Crow. And not only that, when you look at the kind of relationship between white and Black prior to the 1960s, you saw this kind of gradual mending of that which was broken between white and Black, especially in the South. Many of the races in the South had a shared faith, and they were coming together on those terms. They were coming together too in the marketplace to the extent that Black business owners had goods and products that whites did not have in certain areas. Whites would obviously buy goods and services from Blacks, and as such, they were communicating because of that kind of marketplace bond. And you saw this kind of gradual coming together, not only with Black and white, but with other races as well. Again, this stuff is well documented. To what you talk about with regard to from the 40s to the 60s, this boom in Black wealth and Black entrepreneurship, so on and so forth. That is, as far as I'm concerned, a kind of byproduct or a manifestation, if you will, of the lessons taught by the likes of Booker T. Washington, who taught, Blacks to cast down your bucket where you are, be productive, buy property. Harlem, for example, or at least a darkening of Harlem, because at one point it was predominantly white, was a byproduct of, students of Booker T. Washington's who went and bought property there. And then all of a sudden, all these Blacks began moving to Harlem. And so again, all of that was a byproduct of the kind of, we're going to lift ourselves up by our bootstraps kind of mentality. Unfortunately, Martin Luther King came along in 1957.
Unfortunately.
Strong word.
Interesting.
And let me just say, like with Uncle Tom 2, those of you who haven't seen it, I did a lot of the research for the film, and kudos to Larry Elder, who really gave us the freedom to just run with it, to really do a deep dive into this lost history of ours, myself and writer Ansel, who doesn't get nearly enough credit. And then too, of course, everyone who contributed, yourself, Daryl Harrison, Virgil Walker, Dr. Vodi Bakum, Colonel Alan West, Carol Swain. It was definitely a team effort. But as far as like covering some of these gaps that, again, isn't talked about nearly as much as it should when it comes to Black history, Larry, who is the executive producer of the film, really gave us that freedom to really do these deep dives. And so looking into Martin Luther King for this film, it was actually kind of sobering to really find out just how steeped in Marxism his views were. What we're told about Martin Luther King, and I'll make this short, is that he was this Christian pastor who wanted to pass legislation in order to get the racists to come together in order to end Jim Crow, such and so forth. The fact of the matter is, a lot of these Jim Crow laws were already being, falling off the books as a result of what I spoke to earlier with regard to the races coming together. Jim Crow laws existed at the county level and at the state level, depending on which state you're in. And a lot of these laws were being repealed. And so what Martin Luther King did is he teamed up with a Marxist named Bayard Rustin and another one named Stanley Levison. They really pushed something called nonviolence. Nonviolence is a communist tactic where you get a bunch of people together and you march, but you don't pull permits. And the reason you don't pull permits is because you want to give law enforcement reason to remove you with force if necessary. And that worked like a charm. The same tactics were done by predominantly white unions and teachers organizations, where they got dogs and they got hoses. The same exact thing happened. Of course, those pictures aren't, broadcast across our screens like blacks in their, Sunday dress.
Pastor Chad.
By dogs.
Pastor Chad. If I don't stop you, you go.
No, but my point is, the Cliff Notes version. Martin Luther King did have Marxist views. The Civil Rights Act of 1964, what it did was it gave the government, the federal government, more rights than it had prior to the passage of this act. To the extent that Jim Crow laws existed, what should have happened was the ability for states, which they didn't even have this ability to begin with, but for states to mandate who can go into what door at whatever business. That's unconstitutional. So Jim Crow laws were unconstitutional, but the Civil Rights Act of 1964 was equally unconstitutional. Again, this is very complex thing. These are very complex concepts that I'm talking about. If you are interested in learning more about this, we're coming out with Uncle Tom 3. Brandon's going to be in it. Oliver's going to be in it. And then 2, you can come to my channel as well at Shadow Jackson to learn more about what I'm talking about. But no, the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and the Civil Rights Movement was not good for America. It was not good for Black America because Black America was already on an upward trajectory. It brought us from being a trying race under the behest of Booker T. Washington to a crying race under the behest of Martin Luther King.
Woo! I like that.
Now, what y'all got to say about that?
I mean, I don't really know how to back that up. I'm gonna just try, but I agree. I think that, when you were talking about it, Brandon, when you said that was the civil rights movement like another BLM movement, I said, you know what? Maybe it was, because like Chad said, I think Black people in that time were on an upward trajectory, and we didn't really need the civil rights movement. It seemed like more of a movement that was just to get publicity, and maybe for the Democrat Party. I'm not sure what the alliance was back then, but it seems like after that time, and if you could look at the statistics, the Black community went downhill when it comes to marriage, went downhill when it comes to the out of wedlock births, went downhill when it came to violence, like in wealth inequality, like everything just went downhill from there. And I can say that, what was the positive that came out of it? I don't know. We had Martin Luther King Day, like, well, yeah, we can brag about that. Yeah, we got it. One of our Black leaders has its own holiday. Okay, so what? Like, what happens on that day? Like, is there anything that the Black community benefited from the civil rights movement, from Martin Luther King? Not really. And I think that when it comes to, like, the Black community and being on their own and building their own thing, I think that's great. And I think we had a lot of that. We had neighborhoods that were flourishing back then. We had neighborhoods that, you look, and when I saw Uncle Tom 2, it was such an eye opener. I'd never seen anything like that before. Just like you guys, I grew up in public schools, and I was taught that the civil rights movement was this great thing for the Black community. If it wasn't for the civil rights movement, then we'd still be, having the separate drinking fountains and separate bathrooms, and we'd be in living in this racist country if it wasn't for Martin Luther King and the civil rights movement. But now I know, just based on research and watching movies like Uncle Tom 2, that is not true. And it kind of shows you, like, if we could go back to that time and how Black people used to think back then maybe we could clean up the Black community today.
I guess I'm going to be the contrarian on the panel today. I do believe that the civil rights movement was necessary. I don't fully attribute it to MLK, and I fully am aware of horrible things that MLK has done in his past and horrible ideology that he stood for, be it in private or in public. But that separation that you talk about went on to jobs and not getting the same opportunities of reaching the same status that white people had in this country, separation of Black kids to lower end and lower income schools without the same resourcing as white kids, and that a lot of that changed with the passing of the Civil Rights Act. But I think what you talked about there with the breakdown of the Black family and welfare and wedlock, a lot of that came really with Lyndon B. Johnson taking on his presidential administration, and that came with JFK being assassinated. And whether you blame that on the CIA or on one lone shooter, I think the civil rights movement may have been brought about, and all these now the equality that we now enjoy may have been brought about without the civil rights movement, but I don't think it would have been brought about nearly as fast. Now, that doesn't mean that I agree with everything that MLK stood for, and certainly not Marxism or socialism. I don't agree necessarily with the tactics of the Black Panthers, but I want to talk about the people outside of those two major groups who were basically fighting just for equal opportunity for Black people and white people in the United States of America. I just think that should not be lost in the conversation.
Yeah, I kind of feel like, oh, I'm sorry, Brandon, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, I want to jump in here real quick. I think of that and I wonder what really happened. Like, and I keep going back, and I'm gonna pass the mic again, because the same thing that we see, because like we're living through the BLM, we're living through the diversity and inclusion, we're living through reintroducing conversations on reparations. Like we're literally living through this, and like 20 years from now, are they going to look back and say this was a pivotal time in history where cops were just killing Black people for no reason, and Black Lives Matter? We already know how fraudulent they are, but in history, will they come back and say, in this movement, and they show pictures of all these Black people all over the country, and this was to stop the brutality of Black and brown people and inequality and cross gender, or whatever they call it, cross something. Intersectionality and all of these things that we're living through, and we're like, this is bull. I heard a guy on Uncle Tom, the guy came out and was like, when Rosa Parks got on that bus, a lot of Black people were like, what is she doing? Why do we need to be on a white man bus? We have our own busing system. Black owned buses exist during that time. Why they thought it was weird. And I'm not saying this is the collaboration of every Black person that existed at the time, but it made me think, like, wait a minute, were there Black buses at the time? Then why was Rosa Parks getting on a white man bus? Why didn't we expand what we have? I feel like a lot of other communities did that. Like, look at the Jewish community. Look at the way their money circulate. I feel like a lot of other communities aren't trying to push their way into the white communities and greater society. They built their own. Asian community. I mean, like this, man. It's a young girl that I met when I first moved to Scottsdale. She had a sushi bar. And I was like, how, she was my age. I'm like, how do you get a sushi restaurant? She had 2 of them. And she was like, when it came available, they have a Chinese newspaper. Japanese. Maybe it's Chinese. I don't know what sushi is.
Japanese. Japanese.
Something. I just know it's Japanese newspaper that exclusively for Japanese people, that they pass around to like groups of people. And when it came available, they don't sell it to the regular public. They sell it to other Japanese people. And so therefore they have this wealth that's accumulated. They have these restaurants and other stuff that they build as a community. And I feel like, why didn't we keep that going? Madam C.J. Walker was the first female millionaire out of any person of any race. Booker T. Washington with the Tuskegee University. We had so many prominent Black people that were doing so well. I just wonder, why didn't we kind of build our communities up with that level of success?
I do have a question for you based on what you just said there. And I keep Tom Sowell looking over me in the back, because I've read a lot of his work, and he talks about that area of really great wealth and the shrinking of the poverty rate from the Black community while we were living under Jim Crow and while we were experiencing legislative racism. So there's no doubt about that. So if we continued on that trajectory and maintained our separation as far as race or ethnicity is concerned, but Black people were maintaining that success rate, would you guys be cool with that? You're like, as long as we have our separate thing and we're doing
No,
cool, it's okay to have the Black bus, it's okay to have the
yeah,
white.
no. Let me say this. I think that what would have happened inevitably was that we would have
Mhm.
been able to join forces at some
Yep.
point. I think
Okay.
that what would have happened was Black community would have been sustainable independently, and then we
Mhm.
would have been able to branch out and partner with other people. With, like, for instance, we had our own baseball league. You
Right.
know, like we have HBCU. I mean, this is now, but like
Yeah.
HBCUs. I mean, I'm just saying, think about this for a minute. If all the Black athletes only went to HBCUs, they would be the most wealthy colleges and universities in
Facts.
the entire country, because they would have all of the NFL player. You know, that'll be like another NFL. Will be
Yep.
all of these great athletes and all of these great sports. They would dominate sports in every arena. But see, the problem is that they were fighting to be at the University of, Ohio State. They
Mhm.
wanted to be at University of Tennessee instead of being at HBCUs. And like, I feel like we would have less complaining now if there was a stabilized economic system for Black people in America, not staying isolated, because I don't think other groups are isolated. What they
Sure.
did was dominate, and then they,
Then
give
intermingle.
hand out to their people. And I think Black people don't really do that. And I think that's why we're the group of people that is the most hurt and feel like the most downtrodden in this country. And that's just my opinion. Let me pass it.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I'll-
Yeah, people forget that Asians were kept out of a lot of these places too, in the same way that
Yep.
Blacks were.
Mhm.
and Jews
Again,
and Jews.
Yeah, Jews,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
Mexicans, like all races were kept out of certain areas that certain races didn't want. And again, the difference when it comes to Black folks is that there was such an emphasis placed on Black people through the civil rights movement. And this goes all the way back to 1928, the Communist Comintern, who laid out their plan for the American Negro, because if color can count for anything, the Negro's color can be used as a battering ram against the American capitalist system. Again, anybody can go back and read this. And so there was heavy effort and emphasis placed upon this. And what I was able to find with my research is that there were church bombings and things going on, and nobody was able to figure out, well, why are these Black churches being bombed? It must be the Klan. And the reality is that communists were behind not all, but a lot of these church bombings, because they saw it necessary to, in a sense, keep this kind of chasm, this kind of enmity between Black and white, especially in the South, because to the extent that Blacks were really making such gains in business and so on, to Manning Johnson's point, the communists didn't want for Blacks to integrate with ordinary white folks. Instead, they wanted them to integrate with the communists. And so I do encourage people to go back and listen to Manning Johnson, because one of the things that he points out, and my research verifies, is that what people do when they say, well, Blacks, we had subpar schools, we had, subpar this, subpar that. And so we needed integration in order to, put Blacks in the same leagues as whites. What you're doing when you do that is you're placing the stigma of inferiority on Black folks. When the reality is, when you interview people, and I've done this, when you interview people who did go to school, to Black schools before integration, you will find that they got a superior education than when the schools were integrated. And so we can't automatically assume that Blacks, because they went to entirely Black schools, that they were getting this poor education. The fact is that they were getting an education that's far superior to predominantly Black schools today.
Yeah.
But the last point I'll make is, to echo what Brandon said, with regard to he believes that these, like, we would be in a better place today if not for the civil rights movement. I can say that definitively because it was already happening. It was already happening all throughout the South, especially in Texas and in Oklahoma and Arkansas. And so, yes, the races were coming together without the federal government interfering in the matter. It's just like
Right.
what Denzel Washington said: you can't legislate love, and that's
Right.
exactly what they tried to do with the Civil Rights Act.
And let me just throw this point, I'm gonna pass it. Like because I see it's like I see the same thing today. We don't need handouts from the government. We don't need, I'm saying we don't need special treatment, and they're forcing us into it, right? You know, they forcing if a white person says something that remotely offend a black person, they get fired. And they're just going up and beyond. Like now cops will get fired if they look at a black man the wrong way. And they want reparations, $5 million for every black person that's a part of slavery in San Francisco where there was no slaves. I mean, you know, it's weird because I see them trying to force us into this antagonistic position where it creates hatred. It's like at some point you cannot just have special treatment for black people all the time, because then there becomes resentment. And it's almost like I feel like they're trying to force us to this. It's the same thing with the LGBTQ. It's like, just let people live and let people naturally get along with each other. When you force it on people, you're recreating this conflict that does not need to happen. If I was white in America today, I would be sick of black people. Like, I mean, not all, but it would be generally like you sitting there watching TV and you like got your LeBron jersey on and you like, go LeBron. You didn't spend $40,000 on tickets since he been in the NBA. And he go, I'm afraid to be black in America. And you like, what? You know, you got so much money. White people will die to shake your hand and take a picture with you, brother. Like, how dare you? Let me just say this and I swear I'm gonna shut up. Just imagine being white and thinking like, well, what about the Civil War? Well, what about all the white people that helped black people through the Underground Railroad? Like, we get no credit? What about the white people in the North that never owned slaves, that never agreed with slavery, and they won the Civil War, and we never had slavery since? You gonna give us no credit? Like, we look at the white people that made the right decision to say, let's free slaves, give them citizenship, and give them the right to vote. No black people voted for that. It was all white people that made the decision to do what was right. Even people who helped Martin Luther King. If you felt like Martin Luther King was a hero, there was so many white people that helped Martin Luther King. And so it's like black people and these leaders are forcing this conflict that don't really need to happen. We should be rejoicing together as a body of people in America and look at our strides that we made forward. But they're just forcing us into this thing that's going to cause more conflict than it does unity.
Yeah, I agree. That's probably by design.
What'd you say, Oliver?
I said I agree, and that's most likely by design. I think that's what they want. They want us to have conflict. They want us to be fighting each other, because when we're fighting each other, we're not fighting the real enemy.
No justice, no peace.
Right. And I wanted to add something. I wanted to add like an example, because you guys were talking about, or we all were talking about, how things were better for black people back then than they are now. I actually have an example of that. So I'm probably the only one that have parents that are like old as dirt. So my parents grew up in like the 50s and 60s, and my wife's dad was talking about this the other day when he was in town, and he was talking about how good their high school was when they were growing up, right? It was called Joseph S. Clark. And he said it was a great high school. All the people went there. People who went there got a great education. They graduated and went to college. And this is in New Orleans. This same high school today is one of the worst high schools in the city. All they do is fight. They sell drugs. Yep. There's no funding. Everything, it just went downhill. And it's a testament to what we're talking about and how things could have been better for us when we weren't integrating schools.
I guess just progress. Yeah. What you just said there, culture, I heard it. Progress means nothing if you're not keeping a culture intact. And I think that's exactly what has happened here. And the unfortunate part about what you said, Brandon, is that it makes people look at any movement, and maybe movements that are in the name of good, and they go, well, wait, there's a slippery slope. I don't know what's going to happen 50 years down the line if we make this change right now, because it's exactly what's happened with abolishing slavery. Now look at how far the black movement has gone with BLM, to now we're four black people sitting here going, I don't agree with this whatsoever, and it's not doing anything right for our culture or our community. Same thing with the LGBTQ, the slippery slope. They've gone down it. It's become extremely extreme. And now people are looking at this and going, well, I don't want to support any progressive movements at all, because look where it's going to take us. They never end. And when you ask these people, when are you going to be satisfied? When is the playing field finally equal for Black people, for LGBTQ people? And when can we move on and stop moving towards this movement? They don't have an answer for you because they're never satisfied.
No, there never will be. Like that's the point. They want to continue to cry about this stuff because they know they get kickback. There's things that they get from being able to talk about how racist the country is and how we don't have equality and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'll say this: the somebody gave a $200 super chat. I'm gonna give you a shout out here in a minute. It's the culture that's crazy to me, right? I felt like we had a culture of excellence and pride because we had something to prove. Like it was value in
Yep.
your family name, it was value in your representation, you know. And I think to some degree they want to show the white man, I'm better than you. We can outdress you. We got better schools. We got better entertainment and all this other stuff. And now it's like we're inferior to you, white people.
Give us
and like,
something.
and so we have such a, like, I remember I went to Paul Laurence Dunbar High School, which is named after the famous Black poet Paul Laurence Dunbar, straight in the hood, right? Same thing you're talking about, Oliver. Things were different and they got worse. Went to Crowley High School in Fort Worth. It's like Crowley is like its own city, but it's in Fort Worth. Went to Crowley High School, North Crowley. When it first opened, it was mostly white. Great school. No problems, no nothing, right? They moved the projects over in Crowley, and the whole city went downhill. I mean, that part of the city went downhill. The school is unrecognizable. When it was all white and a sprinkle of Black people in there, it was great. It was a beautiful school, great education, going to college, safe. And now it's unrecognizable. I know somebody that teach there now, and they like, the kids come to school with do-rags on and wife beaters, teachers, and they cussing and acting like the kids. And now that it's mostly Black, it is run to the ground. And it's like, how is that reasonable? It's the, you know, they blame the white man, but it's like, it's the culture that we abide by. Let me get this super chat real quick. $200 super chat from Teamster Dave here. I'm a full-time UPS driver from Polk County, Florida, and I'm a 23-year survivor of White Lives Matter. I got receipts, and I feel like I want my story heard. Please, somebody contact me. Okay, thank you for the $200. Hit me up in the email. Go send me an email at booking@theofficertatum, booking@theofficertatum, and we'll try to, you know, link up with you if you got something of value. I appreciate.
Can I add something to what you said, Brandon?
Yes, sir.
So you were talking about, and Oliver was as well, and Amala too, just this kind of cultural shift that has happened, where the schools are unrecognizable, so on and so forth. Again, this goes to the psychology of the civil rights movement. I challenge anybody to read Up From Slavery. Whatever you can get your hands on was written by Booker T. Washington, and see if you don't come out of that inspired to go start a business, to be a better husband or wife, to be a good friend, to be a good person. Whereas if you read speeches that were written by Martin Luther King, specifically where he's talking about two Americas. There are two Americas. White people are living on a land of plenty, whereas Black people are living on a lonely island of despair, and they can't find jobs, and they can't find this, and they can't find that. Again, this does something psychologically, where you begin to look at yourself as a victim, where you begin to look at yourself as if, wow, white people are doing better than me. And you begin to get into your head, and you begin to covet and to envy, and that rebels you. People like to distinguish the civil rights movement from the Black Panther movement, not realizing that the Black Panther movement was a continuation of the civil rights movement. In fact, Stokely Carmichael, who was one of the forerunners of the Black Panther Party, was very good friends with Martin Luther King. And what people fail to understand about communism is that there's different arms to it. There's more moderate arms, and then there's more radical arms. And the idea, again, it all works for psychological manipulation amongst the masses. It all works to, in a sense, invoke this kind of recoiling attitude in the masses against that more radical element, so that they might then turn in toward the more moderate element, or what seems to be the more moderate element. And so I plead with people to like actually go back and look at the Communist Comintern, look at their strategy for America and for Black activism. And not only that, look at the follow the money of these social justice movements, whether it be LGBT, whether it be second wave feminism, whether it be American civil rights. Look at the money at what's funding these organizations and these movements. And what you'll find is that these movements and organizations are funded by people with a global agenda, because what they understand is that in a place like America, where we are governed by the people, or at least we're supposed to be, to the extent that you can get the people to give up their rights and to do so in the name of social justice, because that's what social justice is. It's demanding that the government nationalizes a thing, or takes control over a thing, or plays the referee of a thing. And in so doing, we're usurping our rights as free American citizens. And so even though it might seem like this bill or this piece of legislation will be to our benefit, what we find in the grand scheme of things is that it's to our detriment, because all we've managed to do is empower the federal government all the more. So,
right. God dang. Man, that almost made me want to cry listening to that. Cause I mean, it's true. I mean, think about it. We are the Booker T side of back then, and then you have the W.E.B. Du Bois side that will be opposed to us. They will be calling us Uncle Toms. You coon, you sell out, you hate your people. And we're saying you can do anything in America. We're just as equal, just as free as anybody else, but we have to get off of the plantation here in the mind. We got to start believing again. Like I went to Rider University, and I'll never forget this experience. It was supposed to be 50 people, Turning Point USA event, 50 people, 50 probably white people. And they heard I was coming. I said, white privilege is a myth. And the Black Student Union, they got crazy. 450 people showed up. So 400 more people than we expected showed up. And they booed me, man. Young lady come to the front. They want to do Q&A. And I said, hey, you could be whatever you want to be in this country. She was like, well, my mom is a crackhead and whatever. And I said, but you have an opportunity. You can create the new generation. God has given you the ability to have a full scholarship here, and you can start something new. Take this as an opportunity. They booed me. Boo, boo, Uncle Tom. Like, I was giving her hope, and because I believe what I'm saying. I'm very successful myself, and I'm speaking these words to her, and they just booed me off the stage. Not off the stage because I wasn't gonna leave, but they booed me to death, man. And it's weird because it's like there's a faction of Americans of African descent that are completely manipulated in a way in which Chad is saying, let's give the government more power, because Black Lives Matter want the government to do something. They're pushing for legislation. They're not pushing for revival within the community and community-based activity. It's like they're just pushing for more. We want reparations. Well, you give people reparations, they don't know what to do with money. They're just going to make rich people richer, right? I mean, the Black community is more consumers than anything, and they're just going to make Louis Vuitton rich and Tesla and Bentley and all these other companies. Because if you get $5 million and you don't know how to invest, you don't have the perception of investment long term, you don't pass down generational wealth, you're going to be making, businesses very wealthy.
Yeah, it's pretty ironic that the same people who talk about how much they hate white people are looking for white people to save them. And that's the only thing that they think is going to save them. It's when you tell people, oh, pull yourself up by your bootstraps, they don't want to hear that. When you tell people about hope, they don't want to hear that. They want to have this downtrodden mentality. And I don't understand why, other than the fact that maybe it's just so they always have an excuse when they fail. It's like, if I try and I don't get to where I'm trying to go, I can always blame the white man. I can always blame racism, instead of just saying, well, maybe I didn't try hard enough, because nobody wants to say that.
Yeah, and it's powerful it's powerful to identify with victimhood and feel like you have some fight to fight. I'm Gen Z, and I think Gen Z is devoid of value right now and doesn't know where to look or what to fight for. So when you have this opportunity, albeit a superficial opportunity to fight for something, of course you're going to take it. I took it. I was a crazy leftist for a lot of my life and worked really hard to push forward those different ideas and that ideology, so much so that I thought the only way to get out of my victimhood was to convince other people that they're victims. And that was just a never ending cycle that kept recurring. I saw a video the other day in reference to your talk about reparations of this older Black man, I think testifying in San Francisco about reparations, saying, you know what we do to keep our young Black children from robbing jewelry stores and stealing watches? We give them reparations. That's what solves the problem. And there's just such a broad disconnect among a lot of Black people between what real victimhood looks like and how we solve deeply set cultural issues.
Yeah.
That
Sorry
Yeah,
for calling you.
reparations for COVID too.
Sorry for calling you a millennial, Amala. I didn't realize you were
That's okay.
Gen Z.
Just a little
I saw
younger.
her face when you said it.
I'll take it. I'll take it. I get it a lot.
But yeah, it's very interesting how the community and the activists are such hypocrites, because you would think with the Black Lives Matter movement that went on, you would think that they would introduce a Black president, right? And all the Black people say, let's support this Black man because we're sick of the white man. But they don't never do that. They don't even advocate for it. And they sit up here and they say white supremacy is the biggest issue, but they vote for a white president. Or they vote for white people in Congress. And I'm not saying they shouldn't, but what I'm saying is that as hard as they go with this stuff, as much as they're saying diets are racist, reading books are racist, the white civilization, the patriarchy is racist, the more they say these things, the more you would think that people like P. Diddy, because he tried to make the statement back in 2020 or 2018, I can't remember when he made the statement, that Black people should not vote for Republicans or Democrats, or Black people should just shift to vote for Republicans to make the Democrats work for the vote. You would think that Black activists would advocate for that, but they don't. They advocate for socialism. They advocate for more government control, which has been the problem in the first place. Government controlled slavery, government controlled Jim Crow, and yet they're still asking for government controlled reparations. Instead of saying, stop taking taxes from us, that's our reparations. Just don't let us pay tax for 5 years. Instead of taking tax and making us pay the tax back to ourselves as reparations. I really wish that we could be more of prominent leaders in the community, because I will say this, and it's unfortunate because people say this to me and I don't get mad anymore. I just think about how unfortunate it is. They go, you ain't nothing but white people follow you. And I'm like, that ain't bad on me. That's bad on Black people. You got a brother that's successful, that's saying all these positive things, that's enlightening people, and white people are more interested in hearing about it than other Black people are. And I think we all probably share that. I think we all probably have a predominant, I don't know about you, Chad, but I think we all have a predominantly white audience. And it's
60%.
You're 60%. Mine is probably, I don't know what mine is, to be honest. I would argue that it's at least 60 or greater. And when we go to events, it's mostly white people show up to all of my events. Now, some of the places I go is nothing but white people there. Like when I went to Michigan Tech, it was like a little over 100 people, one Black guy, me and him. He go, I'm the only Black guy showed up. I said, no, you didn't. I am too. So it's only two Black people. But it's kind of weird, because the ones who are the truth tellers, the ones who give life, are the ones who get rejected by people that look like us, which is weird. It don't bother me anymore, but it's just weird.
Yeah, they say we're not a monolith, right? But it seems like we are when you have 90% of all Black people voting Democrat. So when you do have those events, of course, you're going to see more white people, because those are the people who believe what you believe. And it's unfortunate. Right. It's unfortunate because if Black people look deep inside themselves, they would realize they're more conservative than anything. And that's what happened with me, because I was a liberal. I grew up a Democrat. I was a Democrat for most of my life. But once I saw what the conservative values were and what conservatives were talking about, I identified more with conservatism than anything. And I think that most Black people would. I mean, a lot of things that we care about align with the conservative or the Republican Party, not with Democrats. But we've been so indoctrinated, we've been so brainwashed by the media and also by our Black families who've taught us our whole lives that Republicans are racist, white people are out to get you. And the only way that we're gonna get out of this is to continue to vote for Democrats, which makes no sense whatsoever.
Why do you think we stuck like this? Why, Chad?
Yeah.
Why do you think we stuck like this, man? Like, you would think that over time it'll start wearing on us, right? We complain every election cycle about our schools and about violence and about incarceration rates and all of these things, but we never change in our approach to voting for a better interest for our community.
Well, it goes back to what Amala was saying, and that is that there's power in victimhood. Once you've established that you're a victim and that's your identity, all the rest is easy, because to your point, Brandon, you're then able to inundate Black folks, especially Black youth, with yet another example after another example as to why you're a victim and why you should be angry. Anger is part and parcel, per the narrative of Black culture. If you want to be Black, you have to be angry at something, regardless of what it is. And so whenever you look at the fact that our schools aren't churning out critical thinkers, because if they were, then people will begin to understand that when you look at a lot of these predominantly Black urban communities, and you see the fact that even though you have a Black police chief, a Black mayor, everybody who's in a position of local power is Black and Democrat, liberal, you're still suffering the same lifestyle, the same conditions that you did whenever you had white Democrats in office. So it's not a matter of skin color, it's a matter of ideology. And to the extent that you keep on implementing and enforcing ideology that is a byproduct or the manifestation of this kind of spirit of anger, you're going to continue to double down on, these negative conditions in which you're living, if that makes sense. But, it's everywhere. It's on the television, it's in education. There was just a movie that came out the other day on Netflix called You People with Eddie Murphy and Jonah Hill.
I saw that.
Yeah.
I watched
I watched it, and
it was pretty
I suffered
funny
through it. But again, like the Black female character, every chance she got, giving yet another example as to why it's hard to be Black in America. And of course, no Black person who's honest with themselves relate to what she's talking about.
Yeah, I did.
Unless
did y'all
you're
watch
just,
it? Did y'all
Yep. Unfortunately, yes.
But unless
I
you're
didn't watch it. I thought it was too woke, so I didn't watch it. But
but unless you're just a paranoid individual, like there's no way that that would resonate with you. And then the last point I will make is those of you who watched the Revolt Summit with Candace Owens, Killer Mike, and T.I. and others, there's a point in that discussion, that interaction. I don't know if y'all caught it, but Candace Owens said something that was true. She stated a fact, a verifiable fact, and then the crowd started booing.
Yep.
Much to Brandon's point. And she said, "Why are you guys booing a fact?" And this is a condition, unfortunately, of many Black folks where, again, if you could, the most important thing about yourself, I personally believe the most important thing about you is what you believe about God. The second most thing that's important about you is how you identify. What do you like? What do you base your identity on? And when you look at cultures, specifically, Asian cultures, right? They believe that they need to be successful. Not all of them, but many of them. And as such, they take education seriously, they take business seriously, and they deal with the facts of reality to be successful. When you look at Black American culture, they start from the premise of half-truths, of victimhood. And when you look at the trajectory of where you will end up, if you start off with that as your foundation, it will not end well. And so it's for that reason that they will sit up there and boo a Candace Owens or a Brandon Tatum, because they're not operating from a belief system of truth and reality, but rather of victimhood and mythology.
And tell me
That's
what
not
I
all
want
Black
to hear.
people. I'm not
That's all that
generalizing,
matters.
but a lot of them, unfortunately.
Would you say, Oliver?
No, saying it's basically tell me what I want to hear. That's all I want to hear. They don't want to hear the truth. They don't want to hear reality. Just tell me what makes me feel good.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
Tell me what my emotions want to hear. I want to change the subject. Last topic, the red pill movement, because the reason I bring this up, because I know that Oliver, you talk about this a lot. just the conflict between men and women and marriage, and kind of like the shaky ground of things that happen in culture. Amala, I think you had I seen a couple of your videos on Andrew Tate. So I wonder, or Chad, are you familiar with the Red Pill movement?
Yes.
Okay, I was about to say you seem a lot more professional than to watch these clowns on there. But like I just want to give my take, and I want to hear you guys. Me and my wife thought about making a YouTube channel where we did like a relationship channel, because all I see out here is wounded single people promoting information from a hurt position, right? They're either so extreme where they feel like men can just run over women and have as much relations with women as they want to, and women should be okay with it because you ain't really that good anyway. Or you see the other side of it where women don't want to have no accountability to nothing. They don't want to, they want a man, they want this mythical man that's 6'2" and handsome and have a good job, great credit, positive attitude, no baggage. It's like, it's a unicorn, man. They don't exist nowhere. And then they don't want to add no value but beauty, when beauty is, in the eye of the beholder, and also based on your attitude. But what do you guys think about this red pill movement culture? I mean, do you think it's destructive? People like Pearly Things, is her name?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, just Pearly Things.
Yeah.
Were you on her show? No, you weren't on her show. You were on somebody else's show. Whose show were you on, Amala?
A red pill show? Oh, I went on the Whatever podcast. That was a dating show that I did. Oh gosh.
I do a lot of videos about the Whatever show too. So yeah,
that's my new favorite one.
Is that your new favorite? I'm gonna let you start, because you were on that show talking about these very issues. So
yeah,
what do you think about the red pill movement and like the society of dating in America?
Yeah. I mean, there's so much nuance to be had in this conversation, because there's a multitude of problems happening right now. You got the modern day feminist movement that is really leading women, in my opinion, down the wrong path. You've got men who are on social media and on dating apps, and women too, and that's really muddying the waters as far as dating is concerned. And then you have people just outright not prioritizing marriage or long-term relationships and thinking, I will just slave away to my career and that'll be something that I'll deal with later in life. I think the red pill movement can be healthy so long as it is encouraging both men and women to take responsibility for themselves, take responsibility for their long-term relationships and where they end up, and giving them a sense of purpose and seeking that out. Where I think it fails is that I think right now, young men in particular are in this void of looking for a place to channel their masculinity. And that void is either going to lead them to somebody like Jordan Peterson, who I would deem to be generally pretty healthy, or somebody like Andrew Tate, which, while he may say things that are accurate in some instances, is not necessarily promoting the most traditional lifestyle, if we're all going to be honest. I mean, he's paying young women to be porn influencers on the internet. So yeah, not the most traditional man around. So it's about where those voids get channeled, in my opinion.
Yeah, I was going to ask you your thoughts about Andrew Tate, but I can figure it out. So
there's some good things, there's some bad. Yeah.
What do you think? What do you think, Oliver? Like, what do you think about Andrew Tate, and what do you think about some of these people that are out here?
I mean, I'm not someone who, like, you see somebody like Andrew Tate and it's like, okay, I'm going to model my life after Andrew Tate. I think there's a lot of things that you can take from these influencers and a lot of things that you can throw away. I think he says a lot of great things that a lot of men need to hear. But there, in terms of his lifestyle, of course, we don't want to advocate for that at all. But I think with a lot of these individuals, even when it comes to political individuals, there's things that we can take from them and there's things that we can't. So I think we can take what they say with a grain of salt. I like a lot of these podcasts because there are some of them who are actually, they serve as gateways into the conservative movement, into conservative values, because they may not come out and say, hey, you need to vote Republican, or may not come out and say, hey, you need to wait till marriage to have sex. Like, they may not say all of that stuff, but the things that they're talking about, the conversations that they're having and the discussions, sometimes they have debates. These things can segue into, the positives of living a conservative lifestyle. Like, I watched the Whatever podcast today, and there was a young lady on there, and she was talking to this group of, they're probably OnlyFans models or just Instagram models, and she's basically having a debate with them about waiting to have sex until marriage. And it's like, on this dating podcast that is probably full of leftists that watch this, there's someone on there that's giving another perspective when it comes to dating. And I think he does that a lot. He'll bring people on there that they may not say they're conservative, but they're kind of conservative, especially the guy who came on that was talking about what he said. Oh, if he had sex with a trans woman, then he'd be gay. Yeah. So it's like those ideas are being presented to an audience that may not hear it. Like they may not watch us, they may not watch, other conservatives, but if they watch this podcast, they're going to hear that, and they may think about it. You know what? That makes a lot of sense what he says. So they may go dig into him. They may dig into people that he follows, and these people are going to kind of, go down the rabbit hole and may end up on our side eventually.
Interesting, because I wonder, is it like just clickbaity, right? Are these real? I mean, Amala, you was there. Are these real? Are they just going out and getting the most crazy women that you could possibly think of? Is this a real representation of young women? Because, I ain't in the market no more, and I'm in my 30s. Like, are these women that dumb now? Where they just lost?
Yeah, I actually asked the guy, how are you getting the female candidates who come on this show? And he says, well, sometimes they reach out to me through email and they want to get on the show. But other than that, he actually has a Hinge profile where he swipes on girls and says, hey, I run a podcast. Do you want to come on the show? So he's really just getting a general sample of the population. So these are real women who really believe these things.
It is scary because most of them are completely delusional. Like, even on the whatever podcast, I made a couple of videos about it. Most of the videos go viral because it's so ridiculous. The guy saying, I don't want to sleep with a trans woman woman because then I'd be gay. And the girl got mad and quit the show. He brought her back because she's good for entertainment, but she quit the show because he was mean and that you're not gay if you sleep with a man. At least he's a woman, and like the girl quit, and the other girl was just as stupid as she was, and they both quit. And it's like, and then Fresh and Fit, and I think that I call them Fresh and Fraud because them dudes right there are whack to me. However, they have good points too that they bring out, and they had these Looney Tune girls on there that is just OnlyFans. They work at strip clubs. Even Kevin Samuel, rest his soul, I think he would say stuff that was extreme. But Kevin Samuel was the one, man, in my opinion, because I felt like he was like really a lot smarter and a lot less weird as some of these other younger guys.
Agreed.
But he would get women on there, and I remember I'd never forget this when I popped it on, and the woman was like walking around, and she was in a locker room, and she was like, "I'm too good for you." He said, "Where are you at?" She said, "I'm at work." He said, "Are you at a strip club?" She was on break, and she talking about, "I'm too good for you." I'm like, is these women trying to go?
Oh my gosh!
Or she really thought she had an incredible amount of value. But anyway, I just wanted to hear y'all's opinion on that.
I really like Amala's point about how she would hope that people will land in the camp of a Jordan Peterson. More so than someone like a Andrew Tate. What I do like about Andrew Tate and the late Kevin Samuels is, even though I don't agree entirely with what either of them said, the fact is they are providing a kind of shock to this kind of cultural system in which we now find ourselves. And to Oliver's point, it does provide a kind of gateway wherein you would hope that they would land at someone like yourself and or like a Jordan Peterson. And I do encourage you to start that YouTube channel with Corinne. I think that is much needed content, especially in this day and age in which we now find ourselves.
Yeah, and it's important. Yeah, keep going. Okay, I was going to say it's important that when these Andrew Tates or people like him pop up, that they not be censored and not be banned, because you actually have to allow ideas to fail people. You have to allow them to go through their own process. And when you create this space of now Andrew Tate's gone, he's off the internet, not talking about the arrest, but just the censorship, somebody else more extreme is going to fill that space because they know what works now and they know what people are looking for. So they're going to try and tap into that in the most extreme way possible. And it's just going to send you down a dark chasm where men are channeling their masculinity into something that's not helpful for society whatsoever.
But I do,
Yeah,
I mean, I'll be remiss if I don't add this point. If you want a true picture of manhood, go to the Bible. Jesus is the most perfect picture of manhood. He said, you know, he talked about things about laying your life down for your friends. And the Bible talks a lot about just how a man ought to love his wife and his children. And so there's no better picture of what the ideal man is than the scriptures. So,
oh yeah, and woman. I see, you know, the virtuous woman, and you know, it's a lot of stuff in the Bible that I just like. Even if a person wasn't religious or anything, it's like that book got a lot of good sayings in it, like that holds true. If I could only follow that thing 100% of the time, I would be an angel floating around, and people would be thinking I'm the greatest man on planet Earth with no problems. But I can't. Sometimes I can't follow that thing. People make me have to repent every day. But you know, I think that one thing is the reason why I wanted to make the channel, because as a married man and my wife, I think we could give better context, because these young guys are single, and it sounds cute to say all this stuff, right? You know, like these guys will get on there and say, a man don't need a woman need a man. If every woman was not on earth, men could still survive. It's like, you guys gotta stop it. You know, we're both equally valuable, right? There's no human being created without a woman giving birth to him, and there's no woman giving birth to anybody without a man planting a seed. Like, we both are equally valuable to one another, and God made us that way, in my opinion, to best raise children and raise a family and raise a community, and all of those things are commingled and woven into the fabric of us being together and uniting. And yeah, we have a difference of opinion, right? Women see things different than men. But I just want to hear people out there speaking it from a Christian perspective, because Andrew Tate says a lot of great things, but he also is a nut job. And he says things that I'm like, bro, I would never, like, you doing too much. You know, I'm gonna go and like this because you talking real reckless. Yeah. And some of these other people do the same thing. You know, they get on there and they bash women, and they get, you know, they just degrade these emotionally unstable women that they bring on the shows. It's good for entertainment. I'm not gonna lie. It's like funny to watch them jump off the thing, but it's like, is it really gaining value and leverage to helping people do the right thing? But anyway, I ran my mouth enough. I like to keep it around an hour and a half. I probably should have told y'all before you jumped on here. But I really appreciate y'all jumping on here, man. My goal is to do this every week and bring different people on and give everybody an opportunity to, you know, get exposed to my audience and vice versa. So I'm gonna go around like I always do at the very end, and I want everybody to, you know, give your social media handle. How can people follow you? How can people support you? If you got merch or whatever the case may be, go ahead and let them know. Oliver, I'll start with you. We'll go to Chad, and then Amala, you can finish it.
Well, first of all, thank you so much, everybody on this panel. Extremely intelligent. So I'm honored to be here with you guys. If you want to follow me, you can follow me on Instagram, the Right Winged Angel. You can visit my website, rightwingedangel.com. I'm also on YouTube, so you can subscribe to my YouTube channel, Right Winged Angel. If you want merch, I got merch. This shirt right here, Protect Real Women. You can go to my store, rightwingedangel.shop.com, or you can find it on my website as well. But yeah, I'm here. I'm just, you know, doing what I got to do to help save this country.
Amen. All right,
yeah,
Chad.
So thank you, Brandon, for having me on the show. I really appreciate it. I respect the heck out of you. Thanks, Amala, for the pushback. I like a good challenge, and I like the intelligent discourse. I appreciate that. Hopefully we can have more conversations.
Absolutely.
I'm on IG, YouTube, and Twitter, all at Chad O. Jackson. I'm getting ready to sell some merch through Brandon's business, so I'm excited about that. So yeah, thank you guys.
Awesome. And I'm on the Thenobi. It's been fun. I hope to be back. And I'm going to go read some civil rights books after this, because I'm open to having my mind changed on it. All I got was my government education. So we're going to have to look into this a little bit deeper. I'm going to go watch Uncle Tom 2 after this.
You haven't seen the movie?
I haven't seen Uncle Tom 2. No.
Oh my God, it's going to blow you.
It's a game changer.
And I bet 3 is even crazier.
I might come back and recant my statement next time I'm on the show. so
How do you
thank you for that.
How do you say your last name?
It's Epinobi. The K is silent for whatever reason. I don't know why.
I've been
I don't know
pronouncing it
why
wrong.
No, it's all good. Everybody
Epinobi.
pronounces my name wrong. It's like a rite of passage, so it's all right. But you can type in my name and find me anywhere. I'm on all podcast platforms, all social media.
Yeah, so your podcast is The Unapologetic.
Yep. Almost at 1 million subs, guys. Help me out.
On YouTube. Yeah, you guys, if you guys are watching, there's 1,000 or 1,100 people watching. That should be 1,100 more subscribers to Amala's page. So go watch, go check out Amala's page. Almost 1 million. That is crazy. I'm so proud of you.
Wow,
I remember when you first started out. Now you're almost a millionaire.
You shared one of my videos. You were one of the first people to ever share my videos. So thank you, Brandon.
Yeah, because let me say this. I want to throw this out there. I believe in uplifting everybody. I believe in giving everybody a voice if I can. I don't believe in like gatekeeping and being like, oh, I want to be the biggest YouTuber. I'm like, nah, man. If you saying something fire, if you on point, I'm gonna share your stuff, because I think all of us have a voice. All of us have a unique belief, and we just have our own ways. And the beauty of it is that there's so many people that may never watch me, but they'll watch Oliver. May never watch me, but they watch Amala or Chad. And everybody has their own unique things that people can identify with. Being a leftist, like, Amala, you said you were a raging leftist at one point. I saw the video. I was like, God, that's Amala right there. She was an activist, boy. Super. She was one of these activists, bro. Like the crazy leftists with the blue hair thing.
No.
So, but being able to be exposed to that and come out of that is such an incredible testament. Oliver, you as well, and Chad. The things that you guys are able to do just reaches so many people in a very unique way. And I think we all have a purpose. And I'm so happy to see us all doing our own thing. YouTube channels, podcasts. This is the way it should be. It should be millions of us out here, speaking the truth. So God bless you guys. Thank you all for being here. Everybody that was watching for the super chats. Thank you all for watching. That's 5 hours of talking. What was it, 5 hours, Nick? Yeah, because I did a 3-hour radio show, then I did this.
Wow.
Plus, I made the videos before that. So I've been talking for like 6 hours.
Wow.
And I'm ready to go to bed. So I love all of you guys. Thank you all for watching. All of the guests, y'all hold on one second. I'm going to end the broadcast, and then we'll have a quick chat after. So see you guys later. God bless y'all. We out.